Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Vishal, Dahiya, and this week we will discuss the United States' decision to pull out from the Iran nuclear deal. US President Donald Trump has pulled out from the landmark nuclear deal with Iran, announcing America's withdrawal from the Obama-era accord this week. Trump also signed a fresh set of sanctions against Iran and warned other countries against any cooperation with Iran on its nuclear weapons program. The Iran nuclear deal, also known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action or JCPOA, was termed by the US president as defective and incapable of preventing Iran from making a nuclear weapon. This deal was finalized in Vienna in July 2015 between Iran and the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council plus Germany and the European Union. Trump's eagerness to opt out of the Iran nuclear deal has not been a secret. In fact, since his election campaign, Trump had been severely critical of this deal, terming it as a disaster and worst deal ever. In the run-up to his announcement, several European leaders and officials had tried to persuade Trump to stay on, as US exit could set off a nuclear arms race in West Asia if Iran restarts its uranium enrichment program. On the other side, Israel had upped the ante against the deal by revealing secret nuclear files which it claimed showed Iran had secretly retained the technological know-how in the breach of the agreement. Meanwhile, Iran has termed Trump's decision as an act of psychological warfare. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani expressed his wish to discuss the issue with other nations who are party to the agreement. So how will this decision by US President to withdraw from the nuclear deal with Iran affect the already volatile Middle East, and what will be its implications for India's security interests in the region? For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests today. Let me start by introducing them to you, beginning with Mr. KP Fabian, former ambassador. We also have with us Dr. Waiel Awwad, the South Asian Bureau Chief of SANA, that's Syrian Arab News Agency. And we have with us Dr. Rajiv Nayan, Senior Research Associate from IDSA and an expert on nuclear matters as well. Let me begin with you, Mr. Fabian, and try and understand as to this was a deal which was achieved after a lot of effort and a lot of negotiations. It has been less than 3 years. What could have prompted Trump actually, apart from all that rhetoric which we have heard, to pull out from?
Couple of reasons. One is that as candidate he had pledged to dismantle this deal. But the question is, why did you do that? He did it primarily for 2 reasons. One is to appeal to the right male vote, white American vote bank, and also to please Israel, because Netanyahu is very close to Trump, almost, sort of spiritually. And thirdly, he wanted to cut down Obama's legacy. He has a visceral hatred to his predecessor. I don't know why. And lastly, Trump honestly believes that if there is tension in the region, and if the tension, whether it leads to war or not, America can sell more weapons to the countries in that region. So, complex of reasons. And last but not the least, Trump does not believe in the cardinal principle of international law. That is, if the United States has signed an agreement under Obama, the validity of that agreement survives Obama's exit from the White House.
Okay. So that's the American part. Let's try and understand the Middle Eastern part as well. And let's bring in Dr. Awwad here. Dr. Awwad, from the perspective of the several stakeholders in Middle East, how will this decision be received by others apart from Iran? Iran has obviously said that they will, it'll go and talk to other players as well, and the deal can survive without United States also. But what about other players in the Middle East?
Well, I think as Ambassador Fabian was saying, most of the Arab countries are upset with the decision. In fact, they are apprehensive of this American pulling out, because this is not a bilateral agreement between the United States and Iran, but it is an international agreement agreed by 5+1 and agreed unanimously by the Security Council. Therefore, now it's a breach of trust. on the American side. So nobody really trusts the American policy in the region. And that's why we know that they have started it in Iraq, they have started it in Syria. They're looking for more battle zones. They're allowing the Saudi-led coalition on Yemen. They turned Libya into a hub of terrorism. So therefore, they're looking for more battle zone in the region to sell their arms, because there are new arms and they have been floating in the region. And they know that when the American president came, he himself started extracting the money from the Gulf country, rich country, and he is so obsessed with them that he is unable to digest that they have so much of trillions of dollars, and if the American pulls out, these countries will fall apart. So therefore, he give the protection, he give you the arms, he create the problem, the crisis, and he manage the crisis. So Egypt, for example, have shown some kind of cautious approach to the decision of the United States, that they don't want an arm race or nor instability in the region. While we see the Saudi Arabia and the Emirates were welcoming the decision, and that the American have been taken, because we are witnessing now a new alliance in the region. There's Israel, there is the Saudi Arabia, there is Emirates, and there is an anti-Iranian crescent or axis, what we call, which is extended from Iran, Iraq, Syria to Lebanon. So there are two axes now against each other. So the moment the American pulled out of this, the Israeli were quite happy. In fact, coincided with the American decision an attack on Syrian territories, on Syrian military position immediately after the announcement of Trump. It's a clear indication that the Israelis are ups, the anti-Syrian, anti-Iran, anti-national resistance force in the region to create more problems. So we are looking for more instability, more of chaos in the region, which is going to have a great impact, also especially on the oil prices. Despite the assurances from the Saudis and the Emirates, the oil prices will shoot up.
Okay, well, we'll go into the details in the Middle East a little later. Let me bring in Dr. Nayan here and try and understand the basic reason behind this deal and the logic which was given that this deal will go ahead and restrict Iran's capability to enrich uranium and make nuclear weapons. So my question is, how much of that could have been achieved in these 3 years or less than 3 years of time during which this deal was enforced? And what would happen now? Now that the deal, will the deal be off, or will it be just one player moving out and it will be a bit of a chaos there?
No, there will not be chaos for sure, because other parties are still holding forth. And a very complex situation has emerged. On the one hand, Iran has to comply. It has to comply what it has agreed in 2015. And on the other hand, 6 of the parties, one of the parties has withdrawn. So that party is not going to remove sanctions. It was originally agreed upon. So this is one part. Now your first question, impact on Iranians' capabilities to develop nuclear weapons. In fact, Iran had not crossed that level whereby it could have developed nuclear weapons. It had capabilities, no doubt. It had know-how. It has know-how. So you cannot say that its know-how, as some of the Americans are claiming, that it is, or Israel's file, which you have just mentioned, that it is still going on with its capability. It knows how to enrich uranium. It knows how to just progress it, enrich it further and make it weapon grade. But it did just crossed and entered into highly enriched uranium grade, just to show the world that we have got capabilities. But so far, all the reports, authoritative reports coming from International Atomic Energy Agency or other sources are not indicating that it has really backtracked. It is fulfilling its commitment. And before that also, before the deal, 2015 deal, no IAEA report ever indicted that Iran has really progressed toward the path to build nuclear bomb.
In fact, the first report which was submitted during the Trump regime to the Congress also said that Iran had complied with all the
yes. Even that time also, like all the data given, all the statistics given, and nowhere it was coming out that Iran is really seriously making nuclear weapons. Yes, it is defying some of the established Western norms, Western diktats. It was saying that in nuclear non-proliferation treaty, there is no provision to ban enrichment and reprocessing. So Iran is a party to NPT. So why are you putting this restriction? Similarly, it was raising the question that in fact export control is violation of NPT, because it is restricting technology. On the one hand, NPT wants to facilitate technology. So this kind of noises it was making, it was somehow shaking or even questioning the existing nuclear order. It said there are flaws, there are gaps, and it was basically pointing out towards those errors, those gaps in the international nuclear order. So I didn't see anything doing more than that. It was not moving beyond that. It was just demonstrating its capacity, its rightful place. And it had done its homework so well. On international law, no one could question and no one could fault Iran. And that is the beauty. But there is perception. So just to allay that perception, just to somehow yield the pressure of young generation, the young generation of Iran, that deal was cut.
Okay.
And it is unfortunate that President Trump is withdrawing. It is just creating confusion and complexity in the region, and which should be avoided.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about other allies as well, and let me bring in Ambassador Fabian here. As far as US's European allies are concerned, interestingly, none of them seemingly was very staunchly in favor of US withdrawing. In fact, there were attempts made by the United Kingdom, the Germany, the France as well, to try and persuade President Trump from not doing so, as in not withdrawing. So what exactly is driving these larger players?
Well, as we have seen, the Europeans tried very hard. President Macron went there, first state visit for Trump, and there was much of a love fest there. But Macron had wisely or unwisely said in advance that he was going to persuade Trump not to withdraw from the deal. Well, he failed. Then Merkel, German Chancellor, went. She failed. And then Boris Johnson, UK Foreign Secretary, went. He didn't get a chance to meet with Trump. But I think what we have to recognize is that as far as Trump is concerned, Europeans do not have much influence on him. He does not care much. It is America first, and that is that. Now, why do the Europeans want this deal to stay? That is because this is the best possible deal in the real world, not in the ideal world. Best possible deal in the real world to prevent Iran from making nuclear weapons. Now, I am not implying that Iran was already in the process of making nuclear weapons and therefore it was prevented. But the point is, this deal makes it very clear that Iran will not make nuclear weapons. And contrary to what Israel has been saying, the so-called sunset provisions, no, even after the expiry of 10 years or so, as regards the development of an explosive device, Iran is still barred from doing it, and there will be 120 to 150 IAEA inspectors, and Iran will not be able to outwit them. And if Iran tries to outwit them, they will find that out, and the sanctions are back immediately, and other actions can be taken. So the argument that this deal was not good enough is absolutely shallow. And as I said, it was for other reasons that Trump did what he did.
Okay, you're saying that this was the best possible deal in the real world. Let me bring Dr. Awwad here. Dr. Awwad, if we look at the other side of the story, and that the arguments which are given by the both sides, that is the United States and the Israel, is that Iran was working against the interests of the United States in Middle East. Although that is not part of the deal per se, the Iranian nuclear deal. But then could that be one of the major reasons which could have forced President Trump's hand here?
Absolutely, you said it. We see there are two reasons which is more important for. Is one, that American does not want any close relation between Russia and Europe. That is for sure. That you have to have a rift between the two blocs. The second part, which is the Islamophobia and the terrorism that they have started with the Arab Spring in the region, in fact, is the handmaid of the United States, the Turkey and the Muslim Brotherhood. Thirdly, Israel hegemony in the region and Israeli interests safeguarded by the lobby which has supported Trump to come in power is exactly the same people who brought John Bolton and brought Pompeo into the power of the White House. So these are all warmongers, wanted to see more of a war in the region. Therefore, the American anti-Iranian policy is not only in the legacy of Trump. In fact, it has been covertly been done for years. In fact, from Mossadegh time, where the CIA have toppled the democratically elected government in Iran, they continue with the same policy against Iran ever since the revolution has taken place in 1979. Okay. And we know all the sanction on them. We know the shooting down of the Iranian civilian airlines. We know how much they have been putting pressure. Iranians understand that after Syria, after Iraq, it's Iran. So the Americans are there to destroy the region, to destabilize, to disintegrate it, and they wanted to turn Iran into Iraq.
But the American argument is that Iran is supporting the terror elements like Hezbollah, is working against the United States in the Syrian war.
What is the American interest in the region? If you have 10,000 miles away from us and you're claiming that you are bringing democracy to our country, give me an example in history where the Iranians have interfered in the Arab country or invaded any other country. Look at the American chronology of their history. 85 nations they have invaded. Give me one nation have democracy. So there, how can we buy their argument? Okay. It's a man. He is incohesive in his decisions. He makes different statements, and he has given you different statements internationally, whether it is the deal from the trade, whether it is the World WTO, whether it is the steel, whether it is the Middle East, whether it is the nuclear. It's a policy which is even the Americans themselves are wondering. In fact, today we were reading papers, and the American people are sending apology letter to the Iranian that sorry for the mess that our president have created. We are ashamed of his policy.
Okay, so that happens in democracy, where we will have different voices coming in. Let's go back to the technical aspect of the deal, and let's bring in Dr. Nayan. And Dr. Nayan, Ambassador Fabian spoke about the sunset clause. Now, the sunset clause is something which the Trump administration has also been pointing out for quite some time now. That is a contentious clause, as in after 15 years, for the first 10, some restrictions will come to an end in first 10 years. Then in the next 5 years, the remaining restrictions will come to an end. And this is something which will not effectively prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. How strong do you believe is that argument?
Look, now Iran entered into an agreement, and it agreed to reduce the size of its enriched uranium stockpile. Mm-hmm. It is being inspected. It is under the surveillance of IAEA inspectors. Second, now it agreed under the JCPOA to bring the enrichment level to 3 to 4%. Means it is not going to do further research. Mm-hmm. From 20%, which is generally highly enriched uranium, 19.999%, if you just cross that barrier, that is highly enriched uranium. Still, it is not bomb grade. So it means it is not going to really do any R&D on that. Second, plutonium, it has to do away with that. So if you are doing everything except that it is having ballistic ICBM, should not indicate that it is really going to build nuclear bomb. It had knowledge, but it is not refining the knowledge. It is not developing the knowledge, and plus it has signed additional protocol under this deal. So it accepted all the restrictions. And if it's still having all the restrictions, it is developing nuclear bomb. I mean, it is quite amazing. It means the entire global inspection verification regime has collapsed. Means you should not have faith in IAEA. You should not faith in any of the technical system which is meant for surveillance. Plus you are having satellite surveillance. It is not that easy to really hide. Now forensics, nuclear forensics, has developed so much that signature, even from United States, is capable of even reading and studying the cloud, and it can give you the results. So the technology has become very sophisticated, and its allies, its European allies plus United States itself, have got very developed forensic systems. And after nuclear security summit and after this looming threat, you can say, of nuclear terrorism, this is getting further refined. Database is being built. So in this situation, saying that Iran can still develop bomb is far-fetched.
So the sunset clause issue could have been settled in some other way as well. Let me bring in Mr. Fabian here. Mr. Fabian, if we try and understand another statement which is coming in from the US administration that they will try and rework the deal. That is one part. The second part is since US was just one player out here in this entire deal, there are 5 other players as well. The 4 from the P5 and the Germany as well. So can the deal survive without United States as well? What will happen to the deal now?
Let me answer the first part first. It is true that Trump has said that he is prepared to renegotiate a deal with Iran. Now that cannot be taken seriously because Iran will never agree to renegotiate with Trump. Iran will say, what's the use of negotiating with you? Now coming to the second part, will the deal survive? You see, for Iran, the most important part is the economic part. Iran had been under sanctions for so long, and it was the lifting of the sanctions which gave some hope to the people of Iran that their economic misery will end. And with this deal, it has not happened, partly because American sanctions still remained. And we are living in a world where in the international financial system there is unipolarity. In other words, the United States dominates. So even if you are a French company, say Total, doing work in Iran, and if you have a plant in Alabama, then you are vulnerable to the so-called secondary sanctions. So anyone who will do business with Iran will have to think twice. Even India, I'm not saying that India should stop Chabahar, but technically there can be vulnerabilities.
Okay.
And also in the fact sheet I read in the United States United States Department of State fact sheet, that even the other countries buying oil from Iran will come under US restrictions.
Okay, so Indian interests are definitely under cloud here as far as oil is concerned. Let me bring Dr. Awwad here. Dr. Awwad, from the Middle Eastern perspective, can this deal be saved?
It can be saved, but first let me tell you something. If the Iranians said they are not willing to have a nuclear weapon, they mean it. Secondly, the European understand, you ask any European will tell you that this deal will make it permanently for Iran not to have a nuclear weapon. That's for sure. Thirdly, if you know that Israel is staying on a stockpiles of a nuclear arsenal, more than 100 head of a nuclear, and you are keeping quiet about it, and while you are denying country which does not have, it's a clear height of contrast. So in the region where it is a turbulent region, where you know that conventional weapon will be more of promotions to wars and nuclear is just a deterrence, there will be more of selling of arms for the arm industry of the United States. So the region is really facing the heat of the United States policy, where it is, as Ambassador said, it's still thinking that is the unipolarity in the world. There is no multipolar world. Therefore, when we look at it from the wider perspective, even the Russian, even the Chinese, even the German and the French and the British will feel the heat, because if tomorrow Iran and Russia sell the gas in US dollars, then there is no problem. Understand it this way. Bluntly, I'm telling you, because petrodollar era is over. It's a gas dollars. The American want them to price it in dollars, which they are refusing. The moment you change the currency from dollars, you will face the music of the United States. And there where the European feel the heat as well.
Okay, so pretty less chances of saving the deal. That's what you're saying from the Middle Eastern perspective as well. Let me bring in Dr. Nayan here for a final perspective on the Indian interests in the region. Dr. Nayan, as Mr. Fabian was pointing out, that yes, Indian interests in the region will also come under cloud. So how serious will the effect be?
Look, definitely Indian interests will be affected. First reason is that oil, and what General Fabian indicated. Now they have got a law, or they are in the process of developing it, that if American interests are affected, and then it will impose sanction on that country. So it is initially it was targeted, or initially it was made for any country or all the countries which are going to collaborate with Russia. But now it will be extended to Iran also. This is what is coming out. So this is definitely going to affect, and we have got very multi-level interactions with Iran. Iran is one of our strategic allies, especially in West Asia or Middle East, whatever. If you pick up General Mahan's coinage, then you will find that we have great interest in that region.
Okay.
So then there will be confusion. What is going to happen? I don't know really the deal will collapse or not. That I am not saying. There will be a struggle. First level of a struggle will be between the United States and its own allies, because even its own allies' interests are going to be affected. And Germany, of all the European countries, Germany is becoming louder, and it is going to protect its interests. And it is the only country which is really doing economically well in the continent.
Okay.
So it is going to resist. It is not there. It is not going to just meekly surrender to American diktats, or you can say American, whatever Americans are wanting. I don't know about how UK and France are going to react or respond or behave, because even their interests are bad and they are economically struggling, especially France is struggling economically. There are two other countries, non-European countries, Russia
And China.
and China. So they will also behave differently. So I am going to see a struggle. I am going to, and who is going to change, whether America is going to change or these countries are going to change. But I think that these countries are on the stronger side. And in the United States itself, there is resistance.
Okay.
All the Democrats are resisting. Others are also resisting,
So
except one.
there are divergent views.
One
within.
lobby which name has been taken.
Okay.
The support is hardly coming for Trump's this move.
Okay.
So this is the situation.
Okay.
I think
so,
Syria will be paying the price in any outcome of whatever it is. You
okay.
watch and see.
So that's also one perspective. So clearly, U.S. President Donald Trump has made his move, although there are divergent views within the United States, as well as the allies of USA are not fully backing the decision of President Trump. What we'll have to wait and watch is whether or not this deal will finally survive and will carry on, or will there be some other form of agreement between all these players. We'll come back next week with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.